The moment my brother called to tell me about his promotion ceremony, I already knew what my father would say next. "You should come," my brother said. His voice had that careful, measured tone he used when he was asking me to do something he knew would cost me. "Dad wants the whole family there." I pressed the phone against my ear and stared out the window of my office on the 14th floor. 32 floors below, downtown Houston moved the way it always did. Loud, indifferent, relentless. When is it? Saturday. The firm's hosting it at the River Oaks Club. I knew the River Oaks Club. I'd billed 14 hours the week they held my brother's law school graduation dinner there, sitting in a bathroom stall between courses to take a call from a client in Singapore. My father had told everyone at the table I'd stepped out because I was nervous around successful people. "I'll be there," I said. I shouldn't have said yes. I knew it the way you know a storm is coming before the sky changes. Something in the pressure, something that settles wrong in your chest. But my brother, Spencer, was the one person in my family who had never once looked at me like I was a problem to be managed. So I said yes. "My name is Nadia Forsyth. I am 31 years old. I have been a federal prosecutor for the Department of Justice for 4 years. Before that, I clerked for a judge on the 5th Circuit. Before that, I graduated second in my class from Georgetown Law. I tell you this not because I need you to think well of me, but because what comes next makes no sense unless you understand how thoroughly my father had convinced himself and everyone around him that I was the failure of the family." Spencer was the one who became a partner at 34. Spencer was the one who argued before the Texas Supreme Court at 31. Spencer was the one whose name went on the letterhead. Spencer was brilliant, and my father never let a single Sunday dinner pass without reminding anyone within earshot of that fact. I was the one who left a perfectly good job at my father's friend's firm in Dallas to go work for the government. I was the one who, in my father's accounting of things, threw away a real career to chase some idealistic nonsense about public service. I was the one who drove a 6-year-old Civic and lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Midtown when I could have been pulling $450,000 a year if I'd just stayed put and been grateful. "She had every opportunity," my father liked to say, in that voice he used when he wanted people to feel sorry for him. "We gave her every opportunity." What he never mentioned was that the job at his friend's firm had required me to falsify billing records. What he never mentioned was that when I told him why I left, he looked at me across the kitchen table and said, "Everyone does it, Nadia. Don't be stupid." What he never mentioned was that 2 years after I walked out, I was part of the prosecution team that sent 3 partners at that firm to federal prison. He didn't know that part yet. I drove to Houston on a Friday night, arriving late enough to avoid dinner. I had a hotel room booked. My mother had called twice, asking why I wasn't staying at the house, and I had given her the same answer I always gave. Early morning, lots of work to review, easier this way. She accepted it the way she accepted most things, quietly, without looking too closely. My father met me in the parking lot of the River Oaks Club the next afternoon. He was wearing a navy suit that was slightly too tight in the shoulders, and the expression he wore at every family event, the one that meant he was already performing for an audience I hadn't seen yet. "You drove in that?" He looked at my Civic, the way some people look at a dog that's tracked mud across a white carpet. "It has 4 wheels and an engine," I said. "Works great." He didn't laugh. He never laughed at anything I said. "Your brother has colleagues here today, important people, partners from 3 different firms." He straightened his lapel. "Please don't make it about yourself." I looked at him for a moment. The afternoon light was doing something flat and honest to his face, the way good light sometimes does, and I could see exactly how old he had gotten. I felt something that wasn't quite pity and wasn't quite love, but existed in the complicated territory between them. "I wouldn't dream of it," I said. Inside, the River Oaks Club smelled like old money and fresh flowers and the particular brand of quiet that costs a lot to maintain. Spencer found me within 2 minutes and hugged me the way he always hugged me, like he was actually glad I was there, which still surprised me every time. "You look tired," he said. "You look like you own the place," I said. He kind of did, actually. Spencer moved through rooms like he'd already read the map. My father materialized at Spencer's elbow with a man I didn't recognize. Silver-haired, expensive watch, the easy posture of someone accustomed to being deferred to. "Spencer, you remember Gerald Fitch from Chamberlain and Fitch?" my father said, and then, gesturing vaguely in my direction, "And this is Nadia. She works for the government, processing paperwork mostly." Gerald Fitch smiled politely. "Oh? Which agency?" "Department of Justice," I said. Something shifted in Gerald Fitch's expression. A small recalibration, like a compass adjusting. "What division?" "Public Integrity Section." He looked at me for one full second longer than he'd looked at anyone else in the room. "Fitch," he said, extending his hand. "Gerald Fitch." "I know," I said. "Congratulations on the acquittal in the Mercer case. Clean work." He blinked. "You followed that." "We all did," I said pleasantly. "It's a small world." My father laughed the way he laughed when he was uncomfortable. Too loud, too fast. Nadia always liked to pretend she knows what's going on in the legal world. She keeps up with the trades. He patted Gerald Fitch on the arm. "Now, Spencer was telling me about the Westfield arbitration." I let them move away. I found a glass of sparkling water and stood near the windows overlooking the terrace and thought about breathing. The event was a cocktail reception followed by a formal dinner at round tables with centerpieces that probably cost more than my monthly car insurance. Spencer's firm was celebrating his elevation to senior partner. There were maybe 80 people in the room. Attorneys, clients, spouses, a city councilwoman I recognized from a case we'd run adjacent to last spring. My father worked the room the way he always did, and I stayed near the edges of it talking to Spencer's paralegal, a sharp woman named Keeley who had been holding that office together for 9 years and who, I suspected, was the real reason Spencer's billing ran so clean. I was standing near the bar when my father found me again. He had 2 other men with him, both of whom had the look of senior partners. The right watches, the right posture, the practiced ease. "Nadia." He said my name the way you'd say the name of a piece of furniture you hadn't expected to find in this room. "These are colleagues of Spencer's. Douglas Crane, senior partner, and his wife Meredith." He smiled at them. "Nadia is between things right now. She did some government work for a while, couldn't quite make it stick." I looked at my father. I kept my face very still. In 4 years of federal prosecution, I had learned that stillness was a kind of power, that the person who moves first in a silence is usually the one who loses it. "Actually," Douglas Crane said, looking at me with mild curiosity, "what kind of government work?" "Federal prosecution," I said. "Doje, I'm with the Public Integrity Section." Douglas Crane stopped the way men stop when a word lands differently than they expected it to. "Public integrity," he repeated. "White-collar crime, public corruption, election fraud." I took a sip of water. "It's interesting work. I imagine it is." He was watching me with a different quality of attention now. "Who do you report to?" "I can't get into chain of command specifics in this kind of setting," I said, which was both true and the most effective way to end a line of questioning you don't want to have in a cocktail party. "But the section is doing well." "Good year." My father laughed again, that same tight, performative sound. "She makes it sound very exciting. Mostly it's reviewing documents, as I understand it." He gestured at Douglas Crane's wife. "Meredith, didn't you say your daughter is going through the bar exam process right now?" "Nadia." Douglas Crane wasn't looking at my father. He was looking at me. "Would you happen to know a Margaret Chu?" "Deputy Chief, Public Integrity." "Maggie's my supervisor," I said. Something happened in Douglas Crane's face then. Something I recognized. Not surprise exactly, but the recalibration of an assumption. He was a man who had spent 30 years reading rooms, and I watched him read this one. He looked at my father once, quickly, the way you look at something you want to understand before you stop looking at it, and then he looked back at me. "I've been trying to get a meeting with Margaret Chu's office for 2 months, he said, "about a matter I can't be specific about here." "I understand," I said. "You can submit a formal inquiry through the section's office in Washington. They route things appropriately." "Of course." He paused. "It was very good to meet you." My father was quiet for the first time all evening. Dinner was long. I was seated at a table near the back, between a junior associate who talked exclusively about golf and the councilwoman I recognized, who turned out to be sharp and funny and had strong opinions about the water infrastructure situation in Harris County. We got along well. Spencer gave a speech that was genuinely good, gracious without being sycophantic, confident without being self-congratulatory. I watched my father's face while Spencer spoke. He was beaming. He was radiant with reflected pride. He looked like a man who had built something, standing back to admire it. I felt the familiar, complicated ache of that. I did not hate my father. I had decided, somewhere around my second year at DOJ, that hating him would cost me more than he was worth. But watching him beam at my brother while I sat at the wrong table with the wrong car in the parking lot, that still did something to my chest that I didn't have a clean word for. After the formal program, the room loosened into smaller conversations. I was getting my coat from the coat check when I heard my father's voice behind me, talking to someone I couldn't yet see. The other one, the daughter. She had opportunities, I'll tell you that, but she never had Spencer's drive. Some people just aren't built for real success. I turned around. Standing with my father was a woman I recognized immediately. I had seen her photograph in a government directory, on a conference program, and 3 separate news articles about federal prosecutorial reform. She was 61, short, with silver-streaked hair cut close, and the kind of steady, unimpressed gaze you develop after 20 years of courtroom work. United States Attorney for the Southern District of Texas. The top federal law enforcement officer in a district that covered Houston, Galveston, Corpus Christi, and every federal case in between. She had been appointed 2 years ago. She reported through the chain to the Attorney General. She was looking at me. My father had not yet registered that I'd turned around. Always thought she'd come around eventually, he was saying, but some people just don't have it in them to really, Tom. It was the United States Attorney who said it. She said my father's name quietly, the way people with real authority say things when they want them to land. My father stopped. She was still looking at me. Not at him. At me. "Is this Nadia Forsyth?" she asked. My father turned. He saw me. Something moved across his face that I had never seen there before. A kind of dislocation, like a man who has opened a door and found a room that shouldn't exist behind it. He started. "Yes, that's my daughter. I know who she is," the United States Attorney said. She walked toward me with her hand extended. "Vivienne Hartwell. I've been wanting to meet you in person for some time. The Ashton Dynamics case, your brief on RICO application, was being circulated in my office for months. Clean, precise work." I shook her hand. "Thank you. That was a hard brief to write." "They all are," she said. "The good ones, anyway." She glanced at my father once, briefly, with the expression of someone filing a piece of information away. Then she turned fully toward me. "Are you staying in Houston through the weekend?" "Through Sunday," I said. "I'd like to set up a meeting Monday morning if you're open to extending. There's a task force I've been building. We've been looking for someone to take a leadership position on the investigative side." She said it the way she probably said everything, plainly, without theater. "Your name came up more than once." I kept my face still. I was very good at keeping my face still. "I'd be glad to have that conversation," I said. "Good." She handed me a card from the inside pocket of her jacket. "Call my assistant Monday morning. We'll make it work." She excused herself gracefully and moved across the room to another conversation, leaving behind a silence that had weight and texture. I looked at my father. He was standing very still. His face had done something I couldn't name. It had collapsed slightly, the way a structure collapses when one load-bearing assumption is removed. He was staring at the floor between us. "Dad," I said. He didn't look up. "I'm going to head back to my hotel," I said. "Tell Spencer I'm proud of him. I'll call him tomorrow." I put on my coat. I picked up my bag. I walked out through the front door of the River Oaks Club into the thick Houston night, and I sat in my 6-year-old Civic in the parking lot for a moment before starting the engine. I wasn't performing anything. I wasn't waiting for anything. I just needed 1 minute to sit with it before I drove. My father called me the next morning at 7:43. I was on my second cup of coffee, reviewing notes for the Monday meeting, which I had already decided I was extending my stay for. I let it ring. He called again at 8:15. I let that one ring too. He called a third time at 9, and this time I answered, because 3 calls before 9 on a Sunday meant something that couldn't be managed by voicemail. Nadia. His voice was different, quieter, like something had gone out of it overnight. "Hi," I said. A long pause. Outside my hotel window, Houston was doing its Saturday morning thing, traffic thin, sky white and flat with heat. "Vivienne Hartwell," he said finally. "I didn't know." I know you didn't. Another pause. How long have you— what exactly do you— He stopped. Started again. I didn't understand what you did. You didn't ask, I said. I said it without heat. It was just true. He was quiet for a long time. I drank my coffee. I didn't try to fill the silence, because I had learned, in interview rooms, and depositions, in conversations harder than this one, that the person who breaks a silence first is the one who's still afraid of it. I told Douglas Crane's wife you were between things, he said. It came out like a confession. I know, I said. I was standing right there. He stopped. I didn't know. Dad. I set down my mug. I want to say something, and I need you to just hear it without responding yet. Can you do that? Silence. I left Barfield and Crane. It had been a different firm, same world, because they were doing something wrong. I told you that. I told you why I left, and you told me everyone does it and I was being stupid. I kept my voice level. 2 years later, 3 of their senior partners went to prison. My office was part of that prosecution. I paused. I never told you because you never asked, and because I was tired of trying to make you understand something you had already decided wasn't worth understanding. The silence on the line had a different quality now. I'm not angry at you, I said. I made my peace with this a long time ago, but I need you to know that what happened last night, that wasn't me showing off. I wasn't trying to embarrass you. I was just standing in a room being who I am. I picked my mug back up. I've been doing that for 4 years. You just weren't looking. He didn't say anything for a while. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough in a way I hadn't heard before. That firm you mentioned, the partners who went to prison. Yes, was that? He stopped. Was that Hargrove and Associates? I didn't answer that because I couldn't, and he knew enough to understand why I couldn't. But the silence was its own answer, and we both knew it. I had the meeting with the United States Attorney on Monday morning. It lasted 90 minutes. I drove back to my apartment in Midtown with 3 pages of handwritten notes and a formal offer letter to review, pending a background update check, which in my field is a formality that takes about 48 hours. Spencer called me that evening while I was making dinner. Dad's been weird all weekend, he said. I know. What happened at the River Oaks thing? He won't tell me. He'll figure out how to tell you eventually, I said. I stirred the pasta. Give him time. Nadia. Spencer's voice had that careful quality again. Are you okay? I thought about that for a moment. The apartment was quiet. The city outside my windows did its low, constant hum. On my counter was the offer letter, and next to it a photograph I kept there. The 2 of us at Spencer's law school graduation, before everything got complicated. I looked terrible in it. I was wearing the wrong dress, and I'd gotten sunburned the day before. I looked genuinely happy. Yeah, I said. I actually am. Good. I could hear him smiling. I'm proud of you, you know. I've always been proud of you. I know, I said. That always made it easier. After we hung up, I finished making dinner and ate it at my kitchen table without turning on the television, which I almost never did, but the quiet felt right that evening. It felt like something that had been wound very tight for a very long time had finally been allowed to breathe. My father sent me a text at 10:30 that night. It said only, I owe you more than an apology. I know that. I'm working on it. I read it twice. I put my phone face down on the nightstand. I didn't respond that night, not because I was punishing him, but because I was tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep, and some answers need to be written in daylight. But I saved the text. I kept it. That was enough, for now. That was somewhere to start. I've thought a lot about what my father actually saw that night at the River Oaks Club. Not what happened, I know what happened, but what he saw. Because I think those are 2 different things, and the distance between them is where most of the damage in my life got done. What he saw, for most of my adult life, was a daughter who walked away from a sure thing. A daughter who drove a used car and lived in an apartment and worked for the government while her brother put his name on a law firm letterhead. He saw the surface of things, and he made his decisions about me from there, and then he defended those decisions the way people defend the decisions they're most ashamed of, loudly, repeatedly to anyone who would listen. What was actually happening was something else entirely. I was doing hard work in a quiet place. I was building a career that didn't come with a press release. I was part of prosecutions that mattered, cases that took years to build, Outcomes that didn't have my name on them in any way the public would ever see. That's how that work goes. You don't get to explain it at dinner parties. You don't get to correct the record every time someone gets it wrong about you. And for a long time, I told myself that was fine, that I was above it, that I didn't need my father's understanding to do my job well. That was true as far as it went. But it wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was that I had gotten so practiced at surviving my father's opinion of me that I had confused survival with peace. I had learned to carry the weight so efficiently that I stopped noticing how heavy it was. And that is its own kind of cost. Not the dramatic kind, not the kind that breaks you all at once, but the slow, quiet kind that takes up space you didn't know you were giving it. What changed that night wasn't that Vivienne Hartwell said my name in front of my father. What changed was that I finally understood something I'd been circling for years. The choices I made were always going to speak eventually. Not because the universe arranges things for fairness, not because there's some ledger somewhere keeping score, but because integrity compounds. Every time I did the work right when no one was watching, every time I refused to cut the corner that would have been easy to cut, every time I stayed honest inside a system that rewards the opposite, all of that accumulated into something real. Into something that had weight in that room whether my father could see it or not. What I know now, sitting on the other side of that night, is that the hardest thing you will ever do is keep building something when the people closest to you have already decided what you are. Not because their opinion is true, but because you love them, and love makes you want to be seen by the people you love. Letting go of that need, not the love, just the need to be understood by someone who has chosen not to understand you. That is the real work. That is the thing that takes years and costs something real and does not come with applause. My father said he owed me more than an apology. I believe he meant it. I don't know yet what that looks like, and I'm not going to decide for him. But I know that my answer, when I'm ready to give it, won't come from anger. It will come from the same place everything else that has ever mattered to me came from the quiet, unglamorous, daily decision to be exactly who I said I was, even when nobody was looking. Especially then,